Okay, so that's the first question. Do I have an obsession with food? Second question, am I looking to food rather than to God? Okay, think about this. When do people most often eat when they don't really need to eat? Can you think of a time?
Stress.
When they're stressed, okay. All right, what else?
Celebration.
Okay, sure, a celebration. And I should say this. God built in some celebrations, some festivals in the Old Testament where the people were supposed to just enjoy themselves. They were supposed to take a tithe, and they were supposed to take that 10% and buy whatever their heart's desire, it says. You can look it up if you want. It's in the book of Deuteronomy. It was a festival tithe. So God is not, He doesn't forbid all celebrations, all feastings. There are special occasions for us to celebrate and to enjoy God's good gifts. So I'm not saying that at all, but let's go back to our question. The question is, when do we normally eat when we don't need to? Well, someone said stressed. Can you think of any other times?
When you're hungry.
Oh, I'm saying when you're not hungry. When you're not hungry, when do you do it?
Depressed.
Hmm?
When you're depressed.
When you're depressed. Okay, there's another time. Yep. What else? When you're bored. Don't you find that? I'm just bored. I don't know. Yeah, let's eat. That'll be fun. That'll fill up the time. Okay, so when I'm lonely, when I'm depressed, when I'm stressed, when I'm bored, when I'm empty, if I'm running to food to meet the need at that particular time, rather than to God, it could be a sign that I'm committing gluttony at that point. Because God wants to be the one that meets the needs in our life. If I run to food when I'm bored, I'm saying that food is more interesting than God is. If I run to food rather than to God when I need comfort, I'm saying God is more, or food is more comforting to me than God is. And food then becomes a God substitute. We try to comfort ourselves, relieve stress in our lives, make things interesting by eating. And it all comes back to God. You think, well, that's crazy. But yeah, it does. Everything in our life really comes back to God. Have you ever wondered, why did God create people with a need for food? I thought about that this week. Because I don't think the angels have to eat in order to survive. At least I've never read in the Bible that they have to. But I know that we do. Why did God make us that way? He could have made us just like the angels, where we didn't have to eat at all. And the more I thought about it, the more I think the answer is that God wanted food in our lives to be like a signpost pointing us to our need for God. Because we realize that we are not independent and self-sufficient. If we don't get something from outside of us into us every day, we're going to grow weak and eventually die. We are dependent. We are reliant upon food for survival. And Jesus says, I am the bread of life. He says, he who eats my bread, eats my body and drinks my blood has my life in themselves. He says, I am the living water. He who drinks from me has everlasting life. So Jesus is bread. Jesus is drink. He's water. And so we can learn from the way God created us to go beyond that. That's just sort of a shadow of the reality. He is our real life, and we must rely upon him and take him in to be able to survive, to have his life. So if we're looking to food for comfort or satisfaction or companionship or zest in life or whatever it is that God ought to have in our life, then that's a sign to us that we need to really take notice of that and make a change.